Hey, my friends, welcome back to Generator Live. It is 7 p.m. here on the East Coast. We're covered by ice and snow. Tonight is going to be an interesting episode. So, you've heard me talking about Evoto Gate a couple of weeks ago coming out of imaging. You've heard me talk about almost weekly how AI has infiltrated the photography industry. It seems that way. It seems like there's been some sort of focus solely on AI and what that means for all of us. And I wanted to talk tonight specifically about that. I wanted to talk about photography, retouching, how AI is affecting all of that. And there really is no better person to bring on, in my opinion, than my friend Nino Batista. How are you, sir? Welcome again to Generator.
Absolutely, man. It's great to be here again, obviously, and one hell of a topic. So
Yeah.
this will be fun. But yeah,
You know,
I appreciate it, man. It's good to be
we
here.
we've had a lot of conversations, and this always seems to come up. This always
Yeah.
seems to come up in one way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
And thinking about, I had a great conversation with Kelly Robitaille recently, and we were talking about, she's like you, photographer and retoucher, and had a lot of thoughts. Dennis Dunbar, right? Great friend of yours, guy that has done probably more in retouching than most of us will ever know. Pratik talks about this all the time. And I love getting the retoucher's perspective because as photographers, we're so egocentric. We think the world revolves around those of us that are taking pictures. And then retouching seems to be that it's the art that we all need, but for some reason, it doesn't get as much attention. And I think with Evoto, right, since we started there, coming out, having that whole debacle with coming out with an AI headshot generator, it just sparked the debate again. And so, without getting too far into it, I really would love to hear from you what your entire take on this is. And then we can dive into specific subjects and we'll just kind of follow things along. But I really did want to
Sure.
talk to you about this. And I think you're the right person to give me the no BS answers on everything.
I mean, yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate that, and I have a lot of opinions on it because it's something that has made me do a lot of thinking in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Like anyone should do a lot of thinking. And at first, it was concerning, and then it was really concerning, and then it was terrifying, and I've kind of scaled back on the sort of existential horror about it. I'm not trying to claim offhand. Let me just be clear. I'm not saying that AI is not a concerning tech. And of course, when we say AI, Matt, we have to also know that we're talking about a wide open-ended concept that goes well beyond retouching your headshot, right? So we're talking about something larger than that. And this is a debate and something that should be that people should be aware of, is what I'm saying, right? We can't just pretend that this technology is just another iPhone. There's something there, and we have to pay attention. Now, with that said, what I've started to realize is that, and not start to realize, but really what I came to terms with was as an artist, as an artist, um, technically your art shouldn't be invalidated by another function of some kind or another person or a computer or anything that makes manufactured art. We've been making manufactured art for a long time. We've been making manufactured music for a long time,
Yeah.
etc. And that's not to say that it isn't frustrating, but if your career was entirely, or rather, if your photography career, your retouching career, whatever it is, if it can be replaced overnight by AI, that is not your fault per se, but it's very telling about what you were doing. It's very telling about what the industry wants. Because remember, at the end of the day, we have to think about supply and demand, right? So if AI is doing things faster and acceptable and the clients are paying for it, that's the end of it, right? So if you're completely replaced because you were making, for lack of a better term, dismissible consumables, and I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but I'm just going to say that because it's true though. Like if you were making generic sort of ads, I was a graphic designer for years. If
Right.
you were making sort of generic ads and you just needed a photo of a beer bottle, as long as it was adequate, it worked, and you got the ad. If someone can do that in 7 minutes versus your 7 hours, and they need it for advertising, that's a no-brainer, right? So that's horrible because people are losing jobs. There's no question. So what I decided was, since I don't do that, really anymore. I decided that as an artist, someone who's trying to make images for the sake of the images, that's where I was going to focus. I was going to focus my analysis and sort of interpretation of what AI does to us culturally from the lens of an artist, right? For whatever that is, even as a musician, right? Yeah, play guitar and whatnot, because AI is definitely intruding on that space as well. Mm-hmm. So as an artist, what I discovered in myself was, how do I start this? Art is more than the final product, right? It is the final product. There's no question about it. But art, no matter what it is, it draws you in. There's something about that personal experience that was created by a human. And because it was created by a human, there's an extra layer of interest there. Even if it's fleeting and brief, it's still an extra layer of interest. It could be very profound. It could be photojournalism. There's a whole story to the image, right?
Right.
That's obvious. But there's still some human element, right? So for example, if I venture out to one of these locations that I love to go to, Southwest Desert or something like that, or I end up finally going out to Zion or something, right? And I go with a model and I put her on a cliffside and I use a 400 millimeter lens and I take a shot and it's beautiful. And she's on the edge of a precipice of some kind and it's really dramatic and the sky was cooperating and I love the work and it's beautiful. Now, if I show that to you, Matt, the first thing you're going to think is, how the hell did you do that?
Right.
Was there any danger involved? Subconsciously, you're going to think, how did she get up there?
Right.
Is any of this faked? Was there a helicopter involved? Those are questions that would come to mind, which add interest to the image, right? Hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
If I rendered all of that in GPT or whatever the hell, you'd be like, that's pretty. Right. And that's the end of that conversation, right? Even if it looked nearly identical, if you said, is this real? No, it's AI. Suddenly its meaning gets deflated.
100%.
Not the quality, the meaning.
Right.
And when we say meaning, this is where I want to really harp on tonight. And I'm gonna get off my little soapbox in a minute, but this is my whole point that I'm circling. When we say meaning, we tend to, I think anyway, we tend to look for something really profound. Again, the photojournalism angle is really obvious. You have a shot of a war zone. You have a shot of a protest, someone getting killed even. You have these images that tell deep, profound stories. These legendary shots that get the, whatever the hell words they are, I can't remember. Yeah, those tell stories. That's obvious. But there's other stories. There's stories for the sake of the art. There's stories for the sake of the moment. There's stories for the sake of the beauty, of the eroticism, of something. There's some story element that's in there because there's a human or because it was made by a human. Right. And what we're seeing, in my mind, is a reprioritization of, and kind of a recalibration of what we see art as. We forget the human element, especially when we're scrolling on our phones and it's just next image. Well, for a time, that was all made by people for the most part. And I'm not saying it's all valid. I'm not saying it's all great. I'm saying that we're going to have to go backwards now and recalibrate to the importance of something human, right? We even say like, if you say I bought a car and you say a bunch of robots made it, could be a nice car. But as soon as they say hand-stitched leather, you imagine some Italian artisan stitching your fucking leather and your car, and there's value there. Whatever, that might just be marketing, but still, there's value there. So, and I don't just mean service people stitching leather. I mean, in general, making art, there's a human element. And that human element, it's not to say that things won't change and haven't already changed. I'm not being naive. But the human element cannot be replaced because there's no history. Humans have experience. Humans have a timeline. Humans can remember 6 months ago. It could be art you made during a dark period of your life. It could be art you made after you got divorced. It could be art you made while you were terminally ill. It could be art you made while visiting somebody you've never seen since then. Who knows what the story is? But an AI, it's like an adult that was born yesterday who knows everything but knows nothing. Right. And that's awesome for the end result, but little or zero to the meaning. And there's my soapbox to start things off.
I think it's a great place to start, especially for, even when I learned from you years ago, there's so much more than the technical aspect of photography or retouching, doesn't matter. There's so much more in the connection with the subject, right? And it could be a hired subject. It could be, if you're doing retail photography, someone that comes in off the street.
Right.
but there's a connection with the subject that creates trust in the artist, right? And I think back to when artists had patrons, right? And I'm not talking Patreon, I'm talking actual patrons, right? That just basically the artist didn't make any money, so they found some rich dude who just said, you know what, I believe in you as an artist and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of money.
Right.
Because they believed that the artist was going to be able to tell stories or produce work that was exceptional in their eyes above anything else that was out there.
Right.
And it's that trust that allows the artist to portray an emotional truth, right? And
Correct.
the emotional truth is what I see as being lost, right? AI can create flawless, beautiful images, technically pristine images that many artists cannot do. But because they are flawless, they're also a bit soulless. So the idea of human imperfection is the thing that you just can't replace, right? And that's why Ricardo Montalban talked about Corinthian leather in a car, right? Because there was this emotional connection in the marketing that was just kind of like, yes, yeah, you can have any car. We got Corinthian leather. And no one knew what the hell Corinthian leather was. But they were
No
like,
one still does.
but no one does. But they want it, right?
Yeah,
and this is the thing. Yes, things can be produced that are flawless and perfect. But when I look at it, I go, wow, that's technically beautiful. But I don't see the depth. I don't see the flaws. The flaws build that trust in me that this came from a human, right? How many things are we seeing now, especially this day and age, where what you see, instead of falling into the story, you go, oh, this has got to be AI. This has got to be AI. He's got 6 fingers. Or look in the background, the clock is spinning backwards. Or whatever it is, right? I look for that little Sora in the bottom of every video. I'm like, when is that gonna crop up?
Yeah.
Because it's so good now, and we've been so already inundated with all of these images and videos, which are getting remarkable, by the way, that I'm feel like we're losing trust. So fast forward a little bit, and everything that you were saying about creating a product that is a unique to the artist and being a little bit imperfect. I think the connection that I found and that I've been trying to sell for many years is printed products, right? Because the digital aspect will get you so far. I think when artists, photographers start adding in printed products, now it almost becomes accepted that there's going to be a little bit of retouching on it, and that's okay. But the client still respects the photographer that they've learned the craft to do the retouching, whether it's digital or not. And then they're creating a physical piece. And there's this trust between the client and the photographer that this is the transaction.
Right.
When that trust is gone, and people are just saying, well, you're just going to run this through some AI program, make it perfect. They're already uninvesting. I don't know what the proper prefix for that is, but they become less interested in the product. And now it's just purely a transaction. Like, hey, You have the camera, I don't. Take the picture, press the button, monkey. And that's it. So before I run off at the mouth too much, the emotional truth and the trust is what I find are like the last bastions of hope for those of us in these industries, that we have to be able to talk to our clients about that. We have to be able to infuse that in our art in a way that people see it and they believe us. Not that we're trying to sell them some Corinthian leather, but they believe what it is that we're giving them. Trust, trust and truth is really where I'm getting at.
That's correct. And as we know, clients in general, not just photography clients, but anyone who hires an artist, they don't always know what they want, and they are very end result oriented. Even a record label wants a pop song. They're not particularly interested how it's created, really, at the end of the day. Especially, there's variables, of course. So if a client comes to you and says, "I need a beautiful headshot," if you take a snapshot through your phone and run it through AI and they think they look beautiful, technically you've succeeded.
Yeah.
So, what are you supposed to do? Argue with that necessarily? Because a headshot client might not care about your truth and beauty soliloquy at all. They just might be like, I want to look halfway decent on my LinkedIn. And so it's just like we had this conversation recently with my son, actually, because he's into cars and stuff. It's an engineering question, but it can be applied to so much more. When you engineer anything, when you're creating anything, what can be done is not as relevant and not as important as what's the point? What's the purpose? Where are our parameters? How are we defining what this thing is supposed to do, right? Because if your mission is fast car and everything else is irrelevant, you engineer a fast car that's going to be inefficient, impractical, incredibly dangerous, and go 450 miles an hour and almost certainly kill you because you're not considering something other than fast car. So when you're thinking about making something, even as an artist, what's the intent? That should drive you as to what you want to do, right? So me, again, I'm coming from the artist standpoint, which people can criticize my work if they want. They have for years, whatever. But I'm going to model myself from the fine art perspective, making art for the hell of it, making art for the sake of the art, and then seeing what I can do to make a career out of it, right? That's the fine art business model, for lack of a better term. Now, with that said, that my purpose is art for art's sake, and hopefully it lands. It sounds simple enough, but as we know, that's very, very difficult. I don't know what I would do if someone wanted me to do headshots for them and they just said, can you run it through AI? I've heard conflicting ideas. I've heard people say, hey, you don't respect me as an artist. And I get that. That makes sense. You should say that. But there's some clients who are never going to care. They just want the end result. Now, again, end result oriented art, even in music, it's been around for decades. People aren't always looking for the profound. Most people even aren't looking for the profound. They're not looking for the big, deep storyline or anything like that. So for me, I think that the truth element is a big aspect of it. But if you're talking about a client who's paying you to do something, that has already changed and will continue to change. And that's honestly concerning for me because, how do I put this? It's inevitable.
Yeah.
What we're seeing, it's not going to stop. It will taper. It will level out. It has to. But some aspects of industries are going to be replaced. Now, saying that tech has helped destroy jobs for decades is not a consolation prize for anyone, but
Yeah.
it really has been happening for a long time. It's just that AI has a terrifying efficiency, doesn't it? That's
it.
That's the concern right there.
Yeah. The just going back to, and I have to pop a Ricola. I don't know. I've been trying to get over this head cold sinus thing, so forgive me. I got to blow those Swedish horns and have a Ricola. So one of the things that popped to my mind while you were talking about that, about, the hypothetical scenario, someone wants to come to you and they just say, hey, I don't care how you do it. Just get me a good headshot for LinkedIn. I almost want to think like, I'm not making art anymore. I'm making content. And if I'm treating my clients like content instead of the human that wants to be seen, then is that my burden or is it theirs? Right. And I'm really, kind of torn on this, because if it's their decision, I'm in a service industry where I'm supposed to be serving you with what it is that you want photographically. Right. If instead I think of it as like, you just want to be content and you're not respecting my art, then that's just my ego taking over, right? So it triggered in my mind the whole like content versus art thing, right? So many of us make art that we have to turn into content, but now is AI forcing us to think about our clients as content and creating that. The other thing you mentioned about the efficiency is that this is another place where I'm a little bit torn, because AI invariably gives you more time to focus on making that connection with people. If you have a limited amount of time and you only have an hour in a session, let's say, you want to spend as much time with the client as possible. Get to know them, really draw out what it is that you're trying to create, whether it's a commission piece or whether it's something that you're doing yourself. So when time is of the essence, using an AI tool in your workflow, I think can be totally justified, right? Because you're trying to maximize that time. Because of the efficiency, though, it becomes very easy to lean on that tool. And suddenly you're relying on it. And
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is this. And I want to talk about this from your aspect, not as a photographer, but as a retoucher. As as people start to utilize AI tools more,
Mhm.
do you feel like they're giving up or avoiding learning the craft of retouching itself? And do you think that's inherently a good or a bad thing for retouching?
Well, my answer is annoyingly pedantic.
It
And
depends.
we have to start with defining what
Yeah.
retouching even is, and we have to start saying to ourselves, for example, let's look at Capture One, right? Capture One now has a face retouch for a few months now,
Mhm.
and that's cool. Well, I didn't get a card to vote as to what that retouch should look like. Someone decided that. So now Capture One does retouching as defined
Right.
by Capture One. That's it. There was no meeting. I didn't get invited. There was no discussion. This is just what Capture One does,
Right.
right? So, what that made me think was what we're seeing is a forced uniformity because the tools do what they do. Even Evoto does what it does, right? But some of the best artists, let's just talk about portraiture for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best artists, their style is definitive. Their style doesn't look like Capture One did something. It looks like them, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
polished or raw or whatever, you know. And so, as a retoucher, I think if a tool helps you achieve your vision in some way, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's a benefit in speed and efficiency or a benefit in technique that then you can go from, then great. But if you're conforming, hard conforming, because this is what Capture One does now, so this is now what I do, right? Okay, that's fine. But as an artist, as someone like me who likes to retouch my way, um, I don't want to rely on that. You know,
Right.
I don't want to, because it's not just that it works, quote unquote, it's how do we define it? That's like saying that I need to add guitar to the song, and that's the only requirement. Guitar. What? There's so many variables there. So when you say retouching, we've compartmentalized that into one thing as if it's hard defined, and it isn't.
Right.
And so that's again pedantic as hell because I know a lot of people are like, I just want my clients to not have like blemishes. Just shut up, Nino. I know, I'm sorry. Because retouching is not just getting rid of blemishes, though, is it? It's finalizing, right? So that finalizing, I think, is more the personal aspect than the skin cleanup or whatever. Skin cleanup does have some fundamental things that, yes, that we can all agree are at least somewhat fundamental, but vision varies wildly. You know, I mean, techniques are techniques, but your vision is the open point there. So that's why I'm like, I think that if we, how do I say it? If we say, for example, I've never used Evoto, but if we say, well, I don't need to do retouching anymore, Evoto does.
Right.
Okay. Evoto does what Evoto does, and now that's what you do. And I know that's splitting hairs, but as an artist who wants to, ideally, if you want to make something that's definitively you, are you conforming unwillingly at the altar of efficiency? Or are you finding a way to leverage it differently? You know, there's just too many questions. So I can't say that we're not going to need, quote unquote, need retouching. I can't say I'm going to stop it. I think it's like painting, for example, oil painting, right? Let's say you prep your canvas, right? And there might be a method to prep your canvas. Well, you can have an assistant do it that if you do it every single time, right?
Right.
But if you prep your canvas differently per painting,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the art, right? So again, heavy on the pedantics here. I know on the pedantry, as it were, but that's how I have to start the conversation about, well, you know, what do you mean by retouching? What
Yeah.
are we talking about?
So before I even get into that, I did want to say, oh, I'm going to get rid of the placeholders. So Anna Hill is a portrait photographer here in the Northeast. She's amazing. She's a wonderful content creator. And she's just stopping by to say hi. Anna, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the conversation because we're gonna be here for a little bit. So I want to get back to what you were saying in all of that. To me, it comes down to values.
Mm,
What is it that you, as a photographer or a retoucher, have as your core set of values?
yeah.
And I don't hear enough people talking about this insofar as we all have our style of art. We kind of know the genres and what we do, but I rarely hear people talking about values outside of the money conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about, because you were just, and the pedantry is fine. Where do your values start with your art? And have those changed over time as you've adapted different things in the industry? Capture
Right.
One, whatever AI. How
Yeah.
have your values changed if they have?
So I think that I've been by the way, I figured out that this year is my 17th year
Wow.
officially in this. Yeah. Um Yikes. Anyway, but I say officially because I grew up with photography. That's another
Right.
story for I think another interview that we did. But officially 17 years. So my point is, in that time, I feel like I have um, found or continue to look for truth and authenticity more than I did 10, 12, 15 years ago. I think when I started, I was very end result oriented. Like any beginner, I was trying to figure out just how to do this shit.
Hmm.
And then came end result oriented. Then came, well, that worked. I want to do more of that because I want better feedback and I want this and I want that. And um, and then now I'm starting to get into that, not last week, but in recent years, I'm into that mode where I'm like, I want to do something that just feels more authentic. I want to feel something that makes me feel like I'm proud of this. I'm glad I put this together, whatever together may be. So I feel like I've advanced in that regard, for lack of a
Hmm.
better term. I don't want to say advanced like I've gotten better. I've just changed my mindset into that. So I guess what I will say about every artist that they have to do is, whether you're a service provider or not, there's some element of drawing a line in the sand and then sticking to it. That is part of your entire mystique as an artist. That's your whole thing. Where is your line in the sand? Where's your boundary? Where's your value? Like you said, right?
Hmm.
And then you stick to it. You stick to it stubbornly, and that's what makes you an artist. You're not supposed to conform. You're not supposed to
Right.
cooperate. You're not supposed
Right.
to make sense. You find your line in the sand and you say, like Bandcamp recently said no AI music on their
Hmm.
platform.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Line in the sand. I'm here for it.
Right.
Um, that's part of being an artist. That's part of trying to define what you're doing. So for me, I think that it's just a matter of courage, really. Like, I'm not going to conform to AI. What if it comes gets me? What if it comes gets you? You're still a person. You still have the images that are still story. Like, for example, look at something as mundane as the backgrounds of our little video feeds here, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what's happening behind you, but it's not AI, and
Right.
it draws interest. There's a question. What is that thing back there? What is that other thing? Sometimes there's a guitar. Matt, where's the guitar today? These little simple human like questions that make us connect with one another, even the simplest ways, are completely devoid in AI.
Yeah.
They're not there. And to get too far and say that AI is going to go away is naive. But we're gonna see more interest and more excitement about authentic experiences on the internet, because we're inundated by plastic experiences from humans, I might add, but also from AI slop, as the term goes. So I think authenticity is due for a comeback. How's that? And I'm not being naive. I'm not being silly. I
Right. Of course.
understand what we're facing here. I totally get what we're facing, but I think authenticity is going to be valuable. So the question is, are you going to stay the course and be courageous and continue on despite? Because artists have done that for years. Or are you going to either conform or die trying? I don't know. I think it's an issue of being courageous and, like I said, drawing a line in the sand and thinking, this is what I do, this is what I don't do, at least for this season,
Right.
onward, right? I'm not trying to simplify it. I think that it comes down to that.
I think so. As the tools become more accessible,
Mm.
more consumer friendly, right? And this is kind of the thing that Evoto did was they said, all right, photographers, we hear from you. We know what it is that what you're looking for. But we're a software company. We're not photographers. We're out to make money. So we're making these tools, and I have zero issue with that, by the way, but we're making these tools and we want to make them accessible to as many people as possible because we're in the business of making money. As people get access to the tools, just like it was with ChatGPT, where suddenly everybody has access to it and it's the greatest, coolest thing, right? But as everybody starts to use it, what does it do? It learns, and it just basically makes every answer this milquetoast homogenized version of whatever the answer should be. There's no real thought in it, right? It's pattern recognition. Right. So when we talk about the experience of photography, I'd like to believe in the heart of hearts that, like you're saying, you draw your line in the sand as the artist. The experience that you provide, perhaps, is that line. People are going to find these tools and they're going to use them, and there's no way that we can push back against that ocean. But I believe that over a period of time, people will just get bored with it. You know why? Because everybody's producing the same candy cane Christmas picture that, every white woman put out on the internet a month and a half ago. And it was the same exact picture. Now, that in our world is no different from everybody running a 40 over 40 campaign and, basically doing the same thing. However, I think as people get bored with seeing the same image that Sally has, that Jane has, that Mary has, that suddenly they're going to be like, I'm not really going to use these. I want something that's me. I want to feel the power that's me. Guys are going to say, yeah, great, I can look super buff, but when I take off my shirt at night, I don't look super buff. So I know it's fake, and they want to get back to that reality.
Yeah.
The question becomes, can we wait out that period as artists? Mm-hmm. Or, if we have our line in the sand and we believe in the humanity of the photography, how do we weather that storm when we rely on this for financials to keep a roof over our head? How do we weather that storm, even if we do take a stance against AI, or at least advise and educate our clients that you're going to get something pretty generic?
Well, to me, it's twofold. For one of the things on our side is it's horrifying efficiency. Yeah. So we're going to see things progress faster and faster the way they have. I'm thinking about AI in 2022 versus now. That's 4 years, Mm-hmm. And it's night and day difference, right? So I think that ridiculous efficiency is going to peak at some point. I mean, how much more realistic can videos get? How much more realistic can a photo rendering get before it doesn't fucking matter anymore? Right. And so that people are going to do exactly what you're going to say, what you just suggested, I should say. They're going to be tired of the same old. They're going to be tired of the convention. They're going to be tired of the manufactured. They're going to be really obvious when it's manufactured. And it's going to be like, that looks cool. Whatever, Yeah. It even plays out, if I may, it even plays out in the very quietly dark backbone, financial and technological backbone of the internet known as pornography. It even works out there, because what happens is that now you can have all this AI pornography. So you can create all kinds of ridiculous images and images that are morally questionable, let's just call it that, and video content as well. But what happens, even on the subject, that's something that's as base level as human urges and sexual urges for evolutionary kind of things in humans, eventually that kind of generic AI redundancy, someone's going to be like, yeah, but I'm hot for that person. I'm not hot for the invented person. I'm hot for her. I will spend money there, right? So even at the base level, reptilian brain, human urges of masturbation, we're going to see AI slip because people want that real experience. Now, some people won't. Some people will be like the movie WALL-E and happily But the vast majority of us are going to want a authentic experience of some form.
Right.
And I think most people are not going to are not even going to fully realize that they're tired of the AI storm. They're tired of the AI. I mean, they're tired of being tricked. That's a whole nother subject, content that's
Right.
designed to deceive. But if the deception is not, if the deception is intentional and it's clear, what is it worth? A deception is very valuable. We can call it valuable. It's immoral, but it's valuable because it elicits a response, right? So that's a deception. That's one use of AI. AI that's openly a deception, like this is not real. Okay, then what is this value? And certainly it won't have a long term value. You know what I mean? Like I put stuff in GPT, I put stuff into Sora, and once I see it and I go, that's ridiculous. That's a tricycle on an F1 track, beating cars, and then you delete it. This entire rendered video, 15 seconds of a tricycle on Circuit of the Americas beating F1 cars, the most vivid, realistic, absurd thing you've ever heard, deleted in 5 seconds because the moment passed. Right? If I rendered all of that 3D animation, it would be a month-long project at the least. And I would route it around and people would ask me how I did it. And I would probably have behind the scenes video, probably rendered the tricycle. And there's something there is what I'm saying. So I already don't value AI, not on principle, but because where did it came from? It came from the ether, and it's worth about as much as the ether. It didn't come from anybody. No one made it. You know what I mean? No one. And how do I put this? This T-shirt was manufactured. There's not an artisan making this Fender T-shirt. This is mass manufactured, and I bought it for $29, whatever the hell, at the guitar store. And I like it because it's Fender, and there's no emotional investment here other than Fender, right? That I'm not worried about this as a piece of art. There's a place for manufactured things, but as artists, we can't be replaced. If I may be so bold.
Now I'm gonna butt in there for a second, just specifically with the Fender piece, right? Some graphic artist at some point put that logo together. It's now become part of Americana, right? And
absolutely.
And so while the T-shirt itself is mass produced, the logo is the artwork, right? That is what has transcended everything. People know Fender, they know Gibson, they know Taylor, right? Because of the look and feel of that brand.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking that our art, our style, our approach is our brand. And that becomes recognizable only over a period of time.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
Cool.
Time. And we also go backwards in time too, because everything that we do today was drawn from everything that came before.
Oh,
everything
sure.
I do now, everything I say now came from experiences I've had for 34 years. Right. Let's go with that. Talk about age right now. Everything that happens to this moment is a product, at the very least, a product of everything that came before it as a human because of time, right? Time moves linearly, blah, blah, blah. We can get into like ontological and epistemological discussion of time. But either way, point is that because of that, again, an AI is a grown-ass adult with a million skills born yesterday.
Right.
And can only pretend to understand memory, can only pretend to understand experience, can fake it really well. Don't get me wrong. But when you realize, oh, you actually weren't there in 1997, you weren't there in 2011 at that moment talking about that experience. And what is that? What is that? It's something, but it's not a human experience. So replacing,
and
not entirely.
This is the thing that Nikki's getting to. So Nikki Lister joined us. She says hi, but she says, I completely agree. It's not emotionally attached to us. There's no real connection in the art that's produced and what we see outside of basic dopamine hit. Hey, this made chemicals in my brain go giggity, giggity, and then I'm done, right? One other comment that came in, Artemis. I don't know if you know Artemis. Artemis is a phenomenal photographer in Pennsylvania. Loving this discussion. Got to run. We'll have to watch the replay. Perfect. I think, when it comes to that emotional connection, again, I'll keep coming back to this because it's one of the things that I know I center around, I know you have very strong opinions and you center a lot of your work around that human connection, right? And that beautiful imperfection in things, even though you create, flawless images, but that's based on craft and skill and time and experience over a period of 34 years.
34 years.
34 years. So like, you're focused there. A lot of newbies aren't, right? We're fortunate that we've been in this game multiple decades, right? And so 10 years ago, we had to learn retouching. We had to learn the craft at whatever point it was. Is it the same as doing the craft of tintypes or film photography? No. And there were guys that were my age when I started going, you're using digital, right? So that element is always going to be there. I got trolled the other day for talking about AI, and someone said, something about paintbrushes, that AI is going to, doing the same thing that, how was the last time you saw somebody paint something? And I'm like, there are museums full of that stuff. So I don't think painting is going anywhere. So I don't think photography is going anywhere. It's just, what is it going to be considered as an art, right? I see a painter and I go, you're a wizard. I see someone play the piano at a classical level. They're purely inhuman to me. I don't know what planet they came from. Their fingers do things I could never conceive of learning.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that because I can go to Spotify, that classical pianists are irrelevant now. Right. I go to those concerts and I sit in a chamber hall and I listen to just phenomenal music that came out of someone's head and then performed by someone that has spent hours and hours and thousands of hours perfecting their craft. And it means something to me. It's moved me to tears in the past. Mm-hmm. If we're just looking for what gives me a boner, what gives me quick dopamine hits, we're not even considering what it is that we're looking at. We're hoping that the funny little pixels on the screen will make some little chemical in my head make me feel good. And so I don't think the newer crew of photographers, people that are just getting into this now, they haven't had to fight the battle of the old internet. They haven't had to use floppy disk, right? So they're growing up with AI. And this is the thing I think that people get wrapped around the axle about, is that new photographers are not real photographers. New retouchers are not real retouchers because they don't know the craft. Well, they're using all that they know. So I can't denigrate them for doing that or using the tools that they're using. But what I can say is the newbies are going to do new level stuff. The OGs are going to do OG level stuff. I think we're going to see a collapse in the middle, right? The people that were kind of good, but they're not charging $200 an hour for retouching. And they're not including it in their packages because it's just cheap and easy, like newbies would. So that middle where someone's charging $50, $100 an hour, why would someone pay that if they know that, if they know they can get it either super cheap or if they value it, they're going to go to someone that really knows the craft. As people talk about the industry collapsing, I don't think it's going to collapse. I think there's a level of adaptation that we have to get to. I don't know what that looks like yet. Where do you see on both sides, photography and retouching, since you have your foot in both ponds, where do you see significant change happening? And where is that change really not going to be that big of a deal?
Well, the most obvious change is efficiency.
The efficiency,
we're going to see utility things done very quickly, and we already are. So, if I think the next step, for example, I mentioned Capture One in their face retouch, right? The next step will be to open Capture One or the new update and then train it, if you will, and say, this is how I like my editing to be done. Mm-hmm. And I don't even want you to finish it. I just want you to get started. This is the kind of things I want you to do for me. Mm-hmm. And then that has more use suddenly. because it's
Sure.
not just conforming to one thing. That's not, like you said, everything kind of squished into a medium gray of this is acceptable, so this is what we're doing now.
Right.
No, there's more nuance than that. And if you're new, you don't know any better. You just know that a face
Mhm.
went from blemishes to none, and you think win, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing, efficiency, mad, crazy, stupid efficiency. But the second thing is that sort of leveraging in a customized way, in a way that's more tailored to you. Because um, if you came from the world of airbrush retouching, which goes back decades, many decades, not just airbrushing, but all kinds of chemicals and paints and everything
Mhm.
in the dark room, all kinds of things, spray painting, literally spray painting an airbrush with large positives, and then you reshoot them, and it's a big
It was a
process.
big
And then
process. Yeah.
digital, right? Digital comes along, and it's slow and clunky, so it's cool, but not an immediate threat.
Right.
And then it starts advancing in the '90s, becomes a threat, and destroys manual retouching.
Mhm.
It just absolutely obliterated it because it became efficient,
Mhm.
and once it hit the same caliber in terms of quality, because 1992, one whatever they call it, one megabyte image was huge. So
Great.
that was not useful for people. But once it became useful, and then Photoshop, of course, became ubiquitous and regular old school type of retouching, unless you're choosing to do it, is gone. And it got replaced. And AI is doing that now. However, the difference in my mind, the difference is, how will we leverage the technology in a way that allows us to still express something, that allows us to still be who we want to be? And even if we don't know the answer yet, can we customize the tool? Because right now, AI is ask, receive,
Right.
And I understand there's ways of training models, and there's open source things, and you can train it on you and train it on your work. And that we're seeing that. And that's what I'm talking about. But just because you train it on your body of work and then you output something as AI, that I'm not going to perceive that work as the same as your photographs. I'm just not,
Right.
because of that history that's absent. It's cool tech, but I'm not going to view it the same. You might have a cool vision. You might have a pretty image that, again, hits the dopamine, but there's not going to be a story there. So I think we're going to customize the tools, if you will, being able to leverage them in ways that help us efficiently, help us accomplish something, which we're
Mhm.
kind of already doing. Every time you go to subject selection on Photoshop, guess what? That's AI making a choice and
Right.
avoiding you making a pen tool mask that takes an hour. So we've been doing that for a while, right? So is that a corruption? No, if you don't use the pen tool to mask out the subject, you're not a real artist.
Right.
Where is everybody's threshold? Right? That's a question that we have to ask. But at the end of the day, of every damn day, what is your vision? What are you doing? And I want to circle back real quick when I say this, because when we say meaning, again, I want to repeat this. It's very important that I make this clear. When we say art should have meaning, we tend to immediately jump to profound, serious,
Right.
in depth, poignant. We don't we think about serious songs with deep love songs, and we think about politically charged things, and we think about socially aware concepts and things, and that's all valid. But there's meaning, human meaning, in art that's just pretty, because a human did it. A human wanted to do it. It doesn't have to have some deep story or deep message, but a human did it. There's value. And I'm not trying to get too crazy spiritual on you. It's just that when you compare it to the AI slop and the endless amounts of it, one person going somewhere to take a picture is an experience that AI cannot do.
You know,
And that's important to me.
I'll go outside the realm of photography for a second, but since we're here on YouTube, one of the things that I look forward to at the end of every year is inevitably someone will release a humans are incredible video, right?
Yeah.
And you see these people that are cliff diving and, they're base jumping and they're doing all this stuff. And it's just really cool. You're like, how'd you learn to do that, right?
Yeah.
The squirrel suit flying, like, how do you get into that, right?
Right.
And I see that and I get super excited by it because I know those are real humans. Now, at the end of this year, is there going to be someone on a tricycle on an F1 track? And I'm going to look at it and be like, I'm so jaded now and I've become so callous to what is real and what is not, that unless I'm there looking at it in person, it becomes very difficult for me to default to, wow, that's really cool, right?
Yeah.
Because I've lost the trust in it. But let me get back to something you said a minute ago. about, training it on bad data. And I keep thinking about where retouchers fit in. And what I keep thinking about is, yes, people can move sliders and they can do blemish moving or, even easier liquefy on someone's waist by using these sliders, right? But they're working within the confines of whatever the software company gave them. The value in real retouching is that what contrast can or cannot do. This is one of your latest videos about what contrast really is. I've talked to Renee Robin about compositing, right? I don't do much compositing, but she's like, compositing's easy, but everything lives in the shadows. If you don't get the shadows right, it doesn't portray truth, or it doesn't even allow you to suspend your belief to believe in the art if you don't get the shadows right. Because your brain's just like, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So do you think there's a place for real retouchers to work as AI workflow consultants to help people if they're going to be developing prompts or they're going to be using this? Hey, here are the things you really need to look out for. Or do you feel like that is, just 3 months where retouchers do that and the software companies pick up on it and they just kind of work that into the software? Do you think there's a place for that, like high level of knowledge, especially people that grew up on tools that don't necessarily have the background of knowledge of what this software is actually doing, right? Using an action or using a preset tool is great if you know what it's doing, and then you can season that recipe to your taste by tweaking, this slider or that slider or this panel. But if you have no idea, you're at the mercy of the software company as to what they think. And this goes back to the beginning of the conversation where you're talking about that. Do you think there's a place for the high-end retoucher to elevate themselves up into a more valuable consultancy role?
That's actually very fascinating question, because the idea of being a consultant on the matter is something I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. That's actually really cool. Yeah, that would be obviously a temporary thing because AI's slope is extreme, right? So it learns so fast. This is not something you can set up. But what we do see in the world of AI, all kinds of AI technologies, that we have consultants, if you will, or how do we put this? Every AI organization has an entire ethics board, Yeah. And if you're open AI, you kind of need an ethics board, Yeah. But will we be able to consult on the tech from an ethical standpoint, not just on principle, not just AI is going to take over Skynet, T800s, blah, blah, blah. Not just that, not just end times, but what are we doing with our work, right? And I think that's going to be a topic that it should be discussed. I'm not saying it's going to be a professional position. I don't know, but it's something that should be taught. Maybe it's something that should be part of curriculum. Maybe even I give a workshop. We should talk about that. So look, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, AI. Let's talk about the ethical element. What is the ethical element? The ethical element to me is where you draw your line in the sand.
Right.
What does that mean for you? And how do you navigate your career in that boundary? Because that's all that matters. You can do whatever you want. You can go hella AI and you can say zero AI. You draw your line in the sand, you navigate your career, and then what? And so that's kind of your own ethical boundary.
Right.
I think deception is, of course, where everything draws the line. If you're saying these are photographs and they're not, you're not winning anybody's favor. You're going to make enemies, except for marketing companies. Other artists are going to absolutely condemn you if you're saying something is what it isn't. That's been true forever, right? We've seen people stealing photos from others, let alone making AI ones, right? So deception is always, that's the threshold. I think 99.99% of people can't go past the deception aspect. No, but where you leverage it, where you draw that proverbial line in the sand, that's interesting. That's an interesting metric that we're seeing evolve. We've seen people who don't retouch, right? Boudoir photographers in fashion magazines who swear they don't retouch, right? That's a principled decision, right? Less of an art decision. It's kind of an art decision, but it's an art decision made on principles that are important to that person. Does that limit them in some ways? Yes. Is that controversial to some people? Also, yes. However, their courage, you can't deny their courage for drawing the line in the sand. AI is no different. So I'm not trying to simplify, and I don't claim to know because this changes every quarter. But right now, I'm strongly of the idea that we have to make some choices and run with them and be courageous about it.
You brought up ethics, value, principles. Does the retouching workflow matter to the end client? Do you think they care? Right? So we're at a point now where the consumer level tools are okay, but quite honestly, unless you're in the industry or peripherally attached to it, you just don't even think about it, right? People that I talk to here in town, they don't care. They don't care about the process of what I do to create the image. They just say, wow, your stuff looks like art. And I'm like, I think that's a compliment. I'm going to leave it there, but like whatever. But I don't think they're considering the aspects of the principles or the ethics in what we really debate about internally. And so I wonder if this is much ado about nothing when it comes to the relationship between the artist and the client. But it is certainly something that we have to talk about and we have to deal with. There is no difference in this to me between film going to digital, digital going to hologram, like whatever it is. And I think, if you have built-in color profiles in Lightroom or Capture One, and you don't know how to change that to enact your own vision, you're really not any different than the end consumer who can just find an off-the-shelf Kmart tool and do their art, right? I'm an artist. And I picture, Ralph Wiggum in that. So I keep expanding the conversation because I come down to, what am I concerned about? I'm concerned about things like we're not adapting fast enough to think about how we stay ahead of the technology. Do we consult? Do we create an ethics board at the PPA level, and really come out as subject matter experts on a topic that is not necessarily something that we can change at the person by person level, but changing the conversation and how we think about it. Yeah. Do you think that is even worth it to have that conversation? Or do you think that everybody knows the playing field, the companies know what they want to do, they're injecting AI and stuff because some bean counter told them that it's going to save on the bottom line? Do you think it's even worth having deeper conversations like this about how we change our own profession? Or do you think we just make it more of an individual choice and come back to the line in the sand, the principles, the values on a per person level? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's let me answer that in pieces. Yeah. The first part is the clients don't care. They haven't cared about how you retouch from the beginning. They don't care. And just because of social media, everybody knows that AI is a thing. And I'm sure the average client's asking, hey, did you use AI on this? Because it looks cool, right? They don't care. As far as they're concerned, what you were doing 10 years ago in Photoshop is AI.
Right. Oh, totally.
Magic. Totally. It might as well be magic, right? So the client doesn't care. So if you're looking at the ethics question, then the client is not entirely relevant. Now it's a very, very different story when it's some kind of, if there's an element of truth to it. If it's a headshot that's supposed to look pretty, that's cool. But if it's supposed to be, I don't know, a wedding shot and you completely render a new background, that strikes me as unethical. Mm-hmm. I feel like something's wrong there, unless it's an art shot where it's supposed to be in the clouds.
Or requested by the client. Hey, it was a rainy day, put a sunny sky behind us. Yeah.
Right. And they can just live that lie
totally.
in their album for whatever they want, right? So I get it. It's a service and art. Now, strictly from the art standpoint, then there's no client involved there. So that's where you have to draw your line in the sand, like I said, and go, what am I going to going to do with this. But again, if you look at it, there's something sobering there, thinking about the client perspective, that 10 years ago, what you were doing in Photoshop is as good as AI is today. They didn't know the difference.
Right.
They don't know how Photoshopping works because they use it as a verb. Right. And they just assume that magic happens, right? If you're good at it. And then now with AI, they just assume, oh, you ran that through GPT, right? Yeah, that's what I did. I ran your modeling photos through GPT. No, but they don't know, they don't care. And that's a very again, a sobering reminder of what the tech can be seen as. Now, we in the industry, we're in the middle of it. We're in the trenches. We're going to see all the tech come and go. There's people who didn't like mirrorless. There's people who didn't like digital. There's people who didn't like this and that. There's people who still don't like medium format. There's people, it gets exhausting after a while. But there's a big but here. And that's AI's, again, it's efficiency in what it does and efficiency in how it evolves is not to be understated. That is, I think, what scares people, is that if there's an ethical dilemma at all, or an ethical obligation, responsibility, it's in, I guess, teaching. Yeah, that's the word. But ensuring that people as a whole, in any way that you can, don't lose sight of humanity from anything, from music to, especially in the arts, but in general.
Yeah.
We're seeing that because of the deception angle, right? We're seeing a lot of that, right? We need to be real careful on the deception angle. Videos and photos of things that depict things that did not happen. They are tricking people. That is dangerous for reasons I don't need to go into. But deception aside, we have to hopefully remind, I'm just going to use this term, normies, non-artists. We're going to help normies try, hopefully, to remember that there's value in human effort. There's value in a human hand doing something. There's value in a human voice speaking and saying something that came from their experience, that they can modify your future experience from there. Ideas converge, efforts converge, and things continue to evolve in a very, very human way that literally cannot be replaced, at least not wholesale and not overnight, not in our lifetime. But before we are consciousness that are uploaded into a substrate of mass consciousness, and we're now in this extra, 1,000 years from now, we're a whole different story. That's cool, but I won't be there.
Right.
So right now, my concern is reminding people of their own humanity. Not so much you need to respect artists, you need to respect yourself. Because if you understand your own humanity, you'll see it in others. That's a theory anyway.
I love that. It got me thinking about how much commercial work you do. And this is more video than it is photography. But when Jaguar came out with, I think it was Jaguar. No, it was Coca-Cola came out with, Jaguar was just kind of like, they just missed the mark on so many levels. Coca-Cola did a video at Christmas, like a Christmas commercial. And they produced it, and it's, this train going down the tracks, or it was like 18 wheelers or something like that. And in every shot, because it was produced in those 7 to 8 second VO videos, is that there was a mistake in every single shot. And it was very, very clear that the marketing department, the art department of Coca-Cola, used AI to create this. So there was big backlash, and people are like, come on, Coca-Cola, you own half the planet. Like, really, you couldn't pay someone to do this, right? There are plenty of animators out there. You couldn't do that, right? What are you seeing with your commercial clients at an emotional level? Do you feel like you're retaining clients because you've built a relationship with them over the years, that you are really catering to what they need? Or do you feel like there are companies that are really moving towards the efficiency angle and just get it out fast because we know content's only going to live for 3-5 seconds at a time? What are you seeing when you're having conversations with magazines, when you're having conversations with your commercial clients? What are they feeling? How do they look at all of this?
I mean, it varies a lot, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that, because of what I do, and I've always presented it, at least in the last few years, I always presented that what I do is an artistic endeavor. Not so much, I'm not trying to advertise a soda.
Right.
So I don't ever work in that space. I can imagine that's a whole different animal.
Yep.
But in my side of things, I think I've succeeded okay in selling the human element enough that people want that. They want the human element. You know, like
Sure.
even I don't do it anymore, but even when I put together sets for men's magazines or whatever, you know,
Mhm.
the girl is the point,
Right.
you know? And I'm certain that we're going to see, we haven't already, AI pictorials in Playboy and things
Oh,
like
sure.
that. And that's fine. But think about it, that goes right back to what we were already talking about. You know, not just the pornography angle, but the humanity angle. It's like, who is this person? He does not exist. And that's just not as interesting, is it?
No,
You
and I'm
know?
seeing this. I just saw a thing last night. I don't know if you've heard about this controversy or seen it. There's an artist, apparently a musical artist named Sienna Rose. I do
Okay.
not know the her music. I don't know anything about it. But there's the question, is it AI generated or not? Because the producer on many of these records is a guy out of Europe, Finland, Norway, Denmark, something like that, that is unapologetically creating AI music. And so the question becomes, are we looking at purely AI video? She's gotten like 2.6 million streams or something ridiculous, right? Like Taylor Swift numbers on each record that comes out. Is that something that we're just going to continue to see over and over and over and it becomes indistinguishable? And our thirst for consuming just stuff, I just need to listen to something, that we're
Yeah.
not even caring that this stuff happens? Like,
I think
yeah, where do you go with that?
honestly, that won't change because people have been listening to disposable music for a long time.
Well,
You
sure.
know, yeah, if you go into an office at 3:15 and if it's 2005 and you walk into an office at 3:15 p.m., the same fucking song will be
Oh,
played
yeah.
overhead because the
Fair.
radio station has a schedule, right?
Fair.
Okay. Now, that might be human, but I'm going to tell you a story and this will give you the answer. I want to bring your attention to this CD that happens to be sitting next to me.
All right.
This is a band from Tokyo called Naikaku. And Naikaku is a prog instrumental band. This is face melting, complicated music. Let me tell you a quick story about this.
Okay.
So I discovered this on Pandora or something 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? And so I looked it up in the 2005 internet, 2008 internet, and I found who they were. And they had a MySpace page with their tracks and all that.
I was gonna say, you
And
fired up Netscape.
right. And I fired up Netscape and
Oh, God,
I
we're so
found the
old.
CD for sale and
Yeah.
I bought it. Right. And it took like, I don't know, 3 weeks to get here from Japan. And I was very, very, very excited. Now, in subsequent moves in the last 10 to 15 years, I lost my CD.
Mm.
And you might think, what's this? Well, every year, roughly, in the last 12 years, I have looked for this album, but this band has disbanded. And the guy who ran it all, who I cannot pronounce his name, I'm sorry, he had a defunct Facebook page that he hasn't posted in 5 years. And I kept doing searches and I kept doing searches, just hoping, searching, hoping. One day, a buddy of mine and I were talking back and forth, and we were talking about prog music. And I said, man, I miss Naikoku, you know? And you go online, you can't find this album anywhere. It's not on Spotify. You can't find it on YouTube. You can find some live shows. But one day I did a search just because I remember I said, what the hell? This was in November.
Mhm.
I did a search and there was this record was on Discogs, which is a reputable website.
Yo, sure.
And I was like, is it there? Long story short, it took 5 weeks and it cost me $65. And I bought a CD of a defunct progressive rock band instrumental started by a bass player and a flute player because I needed it.
Yeah.
And I got it. And the first thing I discovered that this effort and this band was so removed from modern technology that when the CD came in, it occurred to me, I don't own a CD player anymore. So I was like, wait. So luckily, my shitbox car has a CD in it, so this comes with me every run now.
Oh my God.
And I need to go. I need to just go to Amazon and order a stupid CD reader or something. But my point is, I'm not like everyone, and I get that. But if you're moved by art and you're passionate about art, you will get the art and you will appreciate the art, right? If it means something to you. And this band meant something to me because they pushed the boundaries of what I considered was possible with music and the arrangements and the composition and the overall mood and all this. And by the way, this all this text back here, can you see all that text
Yeah,
back
yeah, yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah.
That's one song title. That's the name of the song. So, I like that kind of bizarreness and pushing the boundaries of things. And so my point is, if this stupid CD took a decade of rehunting
Right.
and $65 in 5 weeks from Tokyo, why is that? Is that because AI made it, or is that because there's something about the humans that made it that moved me? Right? Maybe not everybody will spend a decade looking for a $65 CD, but somewhere between that and people who don't give a shit about what they listen to, there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of people I think who will continue to make that effort for that human experience. That's why live shows are where how musicians make money now. End of story. They don't sell records. Major musicians, you know what I mean? Everything is streaming. So that interpersonal experience. Someone mentioned once, but let me make sure I didn't break them. Okay, no, I think I'm good. Someone mentioned the other day, they were talking about a big band, jazz, right? Big band, like a big whatever.
Count Basie style. Sure.
Exactly. And someone said they were listening to the tracks and they said, cool. And this old dude was like, what's missing now, if I'm honest? And what's that? He said, you can't feel the sound waves in the air moving from the horns in your face. When you have that many horns, that guy beating the shit out of the drums and everything, and the bass player slapping the shit out of it because he wants to be able to be heard. And that physical feeling of the air being moved by the horns is part of it. And that's true. That's so true. And not everyone gets to experience that. Concerts are loud, sure, but that personal element, that physical element, that visceral element, you're never gonna be able to take that away from us. You can't. You know what I mean? And yeah, we have fake bands. Gorillaz comes to mind and things like that. But those at least have a human impetus.
But that was more of an art project than anything.
It was.
Right?
It was a performance piece. Is what it was. That's still human, right? If
Yeah.
someone types in a prompt and runs a concert, no one's gonna care. Right. No one's gonna care.
I just saw a buddy of mine on questionable.com. He just joined. He's a big hip hop head. And it's funny that he just joined because I was just thinking in the analogies you were making. I remember growing up in Boston and I grew up on hip hop. I was the white kid down at the park, right? I just grew up in this world. And I remember there was a place in Cambridge, Mass called the Middle East. A very famous kind of like rock club. And they have a lounge downstairs. And there was a certain night, it was like Wednesday nights or something like that they would have live hip hop. It was almost like an open mic night, right? And I remember rolling in there one night and Guru from Gang Starr was in there because he was kind of like a Boston dude, right? So Guru was in there and drunk, but just rhyming. And it was right around the time where Gang Starr was really starting to blow up. Moment of Truth had come out and it was just like, what, holy Gurus at, downstairs in the lights. There were probably like 15 of us, right? Yeah. But it was that feeling of you're there witnessing something that was pure to the culture of hip hop. You saw freestyles. You had the certain funk in the room, right? And there's just like weed smoke everywhere. And it was just this wonderful moment that you don't get even listening to a Gang Starr CD or record or streaming or whatnot. You don't get that same feeling that you're in the presence of something happening, something magical that's not going to happen again. And I've seen enough prog rock shows and I've seen enough concerts that you just don't get that same feeling, right? Even someone like me who DJ'd forever, whether it was scratch DJing or electronica, there is nothing like seeing a real DJ, DMC style scratch DJs performing their craft versus a European guy dancing, jumping up and down and eventually twisting a fader because everything is so synced up and pre-recorded. It just doesn't have the same emotion, no matter what the speakers do, no matter what the sphere makes you look at. It just doesn't replace that human element that you're experiencing something. Very rarely have I listened to a record, vinyl, CD, whatever it is, LimeWire download, that I felt that same feeling that I got from watching a street performer in Harvard Square, right?
That's exactly right.
So when it comes to photography and retouching, and we're talking about the humanity of that. This is kind of the hill that I die on, is why I asked the question earlier, do we just have to wait this out a little bit while
Yeah.
people realize, yeah, that experience is missing. Yeah, I can have the shiny new thing, but I like the dirty old shitbox car, right?
Yeah.
Because I know exactly where to kick it to make it stop, you know, cranking or
Right.
whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, it's that experiential thing that is irreplaceable. And I'd love to hear more photographers talking about that experience
Yeah.
outside of the platitudes of, oh, you're on a journey and you're going to get this great experience. Like truly the experience of understanding what it's like and goes into the craft of photography. I think
Absolutely.
that might be the thing that saves us, and retouching, right? So it's not
No,
about just
yeah.
moving sliders. It's about understanding what you're looking at and how do you draw more out? How do you
Yeah.
draw more or direct the viewer's eye where you want to go, right?
I think that teaching people, again, normies, teaching them what art is
Yeah.
not something that hasn't been going on for decades. It has been going on for decades, right?
Right.
Whether it's performance, I always cite Warhol. Warhol
Yeah.
is brilliant for performance. Warhol basically is like, I'm going to make these things and you're going to buy them for a lot of money because I'm me.
Hmm.
The performance is him fucking you. And the performance is his presence. The performance is Warhol basically said, I'm gonna exploit everything and you're gonna love me for it. And I
Hmm.
mean, is there another one like him? Really? Not really. And so that's fine. That's how Warhol did it. He chose to be notorious. Okay. Well, I don't want to be notorious. I'd rather be beloved, and that's
Right.
kind of what I go for. So authenticity is my focus. If it's not authentic, it doesn't sit well with me. That's my line in the sand. That's my line in the sand. It's not authentic. And of course, I have a threshold because someone could argue that it's not authentic to modify a photo at all. And then my counter is, then it's not authentic to even take the photo. At what point do we take a human experience to the base level, sort of simian level experience of only interacting in person? We can take a photo. That's technology that didn't used to exist. We
Right.
can modify the photo. Everyone has a different threshold is what I'm saying. So
I think about that threshold, what makes art art, what makes people gravitate towards a certain artist, or what makes
yeah,
people dismiss a certain artist. And I
right.
don't think we can get caught up in that. You mentioned a moment ago about, not retouching, right? And I split my photography in the studio down the middle, where I have my unfiltered stuff. You can choose an unfiltered session. You're getting all black and white. You're getting no retouching whatsoever. And you walk out the door with digital images, but I'm giving you a printed book because you're going to get the prints of this because I want that to be part of the experience. You want something physical. The other side, I do a lot of personal branding and headshots. When people come in, you kind of get to know them, turn this way, turn that way, snap, done, right? And it's fine for what it is. But I then have to go in and retouch. And I'm still someone that's kind of old school. I use an Evoto, but I have no problem going back to just doing the old school, retouching. I think we put a lot of emphasis on that. I think we have to be the stewards of almost explaining to people why I'm doing the things that I'm doing in the way that I'm doing them. And it's not necessarily a fast process. And it's certainly not a cheap process because there is this craft, right? We go back to the Corinthian leather, right? I want to sit there with my needle and thread and I want to sew you a picture, right? And it's because I enjoy it and I believe that the end product, you are going to have a deeper connection when you see it on your wall, when you look at it on your phone, when you die and your wife uses it at the funeral home. There's going to be a deeper connection to that image than there would be otherwise. And it behooves us to explain that to the people that we're working with, whether it's commercial, real estate, headshots. I think if we're drawing the line in the sand that we are either anti-AI or AI, this was AI with an asterisk, right? I use it as a tool to make it more efficient and pass the value on to you, the consumer. I'm okay with that. But if we don't step up and actually explain some of this, then we're the ones that are causing our own demise. We are devaluing what it is that we do. We're letting the market dictate our value for us rather than us standing up and saying, no, this isn't how it is.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think we had to teach, you're right. We had to teach the audiences. And this is why historically in any art, extreme skill gets the attention, right? With the power singers, the shredder guitarists, the people jumping off cliffs and everything. Extreme skill gets attention because people can immediately relate to that and say, I can't do that, right? And so therefore there's a huge separation, and ipso facto, they are impressed.
Yeah.
But are we always going for impressing? Or are we trying to make some other kind of impact to them? Are we trying to make some kind of emotional impact in some manner? Again, doesn't have to be profound. It can be. We don't all have to be Rage Against the Machine. Sometimes we can just be Ed Sheeran. You know what I mean? As long as we're impacting people, we can. But are we trying to impress? Now we're in a social media economy socially, right? So culturally, that's what we're in, and we have been for a while. And I think we might be on the way out, but that's another discussion. We're used to the likes, we're used to the virality, we're used to the shares, and we're still dominated by that. So impressive is the metric that gets the most attention.
Yeah.
But that's why we have the singing shows and the voice and the other ones. And there's some amazing talent on there. Don't get me wrong. But while someone is there belting out, Irene Cara or something covered, and they're killing it, and everybody's like, I'm thinking, are you guys hearing that studio band back there? Right. Those guys are amazing.
But
no one cares.
The funny thing is, you're right. No one cares. But I love, this is why I love my own autism, because I'm like, did you just hear the fill that drummer put in? Because he's bored as hell, and he's just gonna rip. Or the bassist just does something funky. You're like, you make that funky face. I love that aspect of when you're in tune to whatever your hobby is, whatever you pay attention to. Right, you're gonna see more of it.
Of course.
And I like finding those little moments. All right, one more comment while we're here. Unquestionable.com. We were talking about hip hop. One of my favorite local artists here in Fargo, North Dakota is Duro. He has an album titled 98 Warhol, and it's one of the most creative artists I know. Shockingly, right? So I thought that was great, tagging on to that Warhol conversation. But
what's funny, you were mentioning that you're big, you grew up on hip hop back in the day, 30 years ago, not 40. We're not talking about a long time, 15 years ago, whatever. Anyway, I was at the gym with my kid, right? And they have these TVs that always play, and we always joke about all they do is stream sort of popular hip hop right now, and there's some in the mix that's not bad, but for the most part it's all pretty formulaic, and it's like any popular music, right? So the other day we went in there and it was nothing but like ethereal EDM pop, just the whole damn afternoon. I didn't know any of the artists, but my kid and I are looking at each other like, well, at least it's a vibe, right?
Right.
Out of nowhere, Tribe Called Quest drops, Scenario. Mm-hmm. And I'm like flowing along with every bar, and my kid's like looking at me. And then I'm thrilled because the gym never plays anything I give a shit about. Right. And then suddenly it's over. It's right back to a 3.0 EDM pop for another 30 minutes. And I was like, all right, who did that?
Yeah. There was definitely a worker that went and hijacked the playlist for a second, for sure.
Right. And the video, I don't know if you remember the video for Scenario, but it's interesting. And it was fun. My kid was like, huh? And I was like, oh, that's so trippy. So I hearing that song in the context of this place that normally plays modern stuff, it really stuck out. And that goes right back to the CD. Yeah. That moment of Tribe turning on in the gym was a moment I'll remember for a long time, because of course it was the opposite of what's normally played. It's, you don't usually hear old school hip hop there, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I had a moment with my kid telling him about Tribe again, because I have speeched at him about it before. And those are the moments. Those are the real moments. And why wouldn't the gym just funnel a bunch of AI music? It's just background. Why wouldn't they, right? Who's to say they won't?
the music discussion is fascinating to me. And I know we kind of got in this a while ago and we've stuck with it, but I have down in my living room, I don't know, probably 2,000 vinyl records. And it was like, it's a fraction of what I used to have when I was DJing. But I was going through it last night because there's this poster behind me that I'm just kind of want to put in a different area in my house. And so I've got a bunch of record frames and going to put some records up and put them back here. And so I'm going through, because I knew after DJing for so many years, you don't, as you're flipping through your crate of vinyl, you know the labels, right? You know exactly which label it is. You don't even have to think about it. You just get the label, you throw it on the turntable, you're done. But I remember a lot of album covers that Mos Def, Tribe Called Quest, right? There's Dark Side of the Moon, right? Legendary album cover. Legendary. Asia from Steely Dan, right? So I'm going through all these records and I'm like, I want to put something back here that not only represents me, but also represents the experiences that I've had in life. And I don't think that, and I was saying, it's not that I'm playing the music here, it's that I'm using the artwork that meant something to me. And it gave me this kind of renewed hope in what it is that we do, right?
Yeah.
And about it being longer lasting and impactful, right? You got a Notorious B.I.G., the Ready to Die album cover is iconic. Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, iconic
Legendary.
album cover, right?
Legendary cover, yeah.
So these are the things that I look and I can put on the wall and have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And I liken that to the types of photography that we do and the printed product and the end product, whether it's a magazine, whether it's a piece on the wall, is that it invites not only a story about the subject, but it invites a story about the artist. I don't know the photographers or the graphic designers that did most of those album covers, but some of them, when you dig into it, have the most amazing stories about how they got that shot or why they developed things the way they developed, or how much acid they were on when they were thinking about the concepts, whatever it was. There's something there that invites more discussion. When it comes to AI, there is nothing outside of divisive conversation, right? It just devolves into that's the avatar that we're using to fight instead of discussing the concept, discussing the artist, discussing the reasoning behind it. Why are you naked in that photo? You know, like whatever it might be, I want art to foster that discussion. And I don't think that anything AI is fostering a discussion that is positive. It's always like, ugh, there's the slop, or that's not real, or they couldn't have gotten somebody real for that. You know what I mean? So I think therein lies one of these little pieces that we can talk about the longevity, about the sudden experiential memory that we have about where we were when we heard Scenario for the first time and Busta Rhymes goes off on some other level of hip hop that no one's ever heard before. And there's a Dungeon Dragon in there, right?
A Dungeon Dragon,
And so I think, you know, as we look to other art forms to influence perhaps how we navigate this space, music is, I think, the closest parallel that I have, even beyond painting, because the visual art there, music has always had the visual and the auditory element to it that I just find, you know, I just find to be so much stronger. So I'm looking there and kind of watching, you know.
And I think that the story element that we're talking about, like you mentioned some album covers, you don't know the history of who made it or why or when. The story element is there whether you know the story or not.
Oh, totally.
And that's fascinating. In fact, looking at album covers and sitting with the liner notes, and this is we're not old enough to remember doing this, of course, but no, absolutely not. Because our high school was late 90s or early 2000s. Anyway, so my point is, when you look at this, anything at all, and like this image here, the Nikaku did not use AI for. I've looked at it multiple times. It's kind of grainy and it's someone laying on the ground, and I'm not sure why they're laying on the ground, but I've looked at it a lot, and it reminds me of looking at old album covers. I don't know the story, and it's likely I never will. But there is one, and that's fascinating. And that's because there's a human, again, that experiential element. Someone did it. There was a reason behind it. Who did it? Why? I don't know, but somebody did, as opposed to AI made this. Like, for example, the graphic you put up earlier when you started this conversation with me about AI and retouching, that was created by AI. And you can tell it was created by AI, right?
Yep. Oh,
it has
let me
that
get to
feel
it.
of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It has that feel to it, right? And I could recognize that immediately already.
Yep.
And that image will disappear after this conversation. And if it's never used again, no one will care. That was the purpose of it, though. It was a quick visual to illustrate. It's no different than another title graphic in any TV broadcast. So in that regard, sweet. You didn't slave over an hour making that piece. You knocked it out in minutes, right? So in that regard, it's fine. But if you're going to make actual art and you want someone to remember, you want someone to track down your CD a decade later, it's got to come from you. It's got to come from people. And that's what I mean. This music is not socially profound. First of all, there's no lyrics, so you can interpret it however you want. And second of all, it is very inaccessible and complicated, and it's not ever going to be popular. But for me, it meant the world. And it made me move mountains and spend copious amounts of money for ancient technology, right? That means something. That's powerful. And you can be that as long as you don't compromise yourself. Someone will think about that photo you took in 2017 and talk about it in 2036.
Yeah.
And you can tell them the story, and you can tell them why that happened. I have an image of a girl that I found. I was looking through a hard drive the other day, and I looked at the image and I go, I remember her in Ohio. Whatever happened to, I shot her on Saturday. She was dead on a Monday.
Wow.
And there's a memory.
Yeah.
A dark one, a profound one, right?
Still it's a memory.
That photo now has that memory. I don't have any emotional connection to her. It was a workshop model that I met for a couple hours. So I don't miss her because I can't. I don't know her. Yeah. But there's a story there. That is a dark story. And we love drama. We love death. We love, we love explosions. We love war. We love all the pathos of life. Those are easy to call the human experience. But there's subtle things too. Right. And we need to not lose sight of that because it matters. Every little thing that you do matters. And it's just, modern, like I said, this economy, this cultural economy that we're in of disposable content that we've been in for a while likes to make you believe that those little things don't matter. But they do. They always will. And we are going to level out. But are you going to be part of the casualties when it levels out? Or are you going to be on top? And I think just remaining authentic to yourself is at least the best chance you have. If your work is shit, I don't know what to tell you there. But if you stay authentic, at least you give yourself a chance. That's how I see it. And that's how I'm moving forward with myself. I am not scared of AI replacing me per se, because how about this? If AI can replace me, then it should.
It's a really strong statement. Yeah.
I'd like to think that my work is worth more than that. Yeah.
I know it is, because I've seen you, I've seen what you do. I know your clients. What you do absolutely matters. And I'm gonna kind of leave this here now. But before I go, I do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing, not with that graphic, but with this one. So you've got a couple of different websites, ninobatista.com and then NBP Retouch Tools. I know that you've this year been shifting a lot of things around, and you're creating a metric ton of value in your tutorials and the tools that are coming out. Talk about some of the stuff you got going on, and where can people find all of this? I mean, I've got the QR codes, but is there any other place that they should go? Workshops you're showing up to, conferences, anything like that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One thing, the main shift that I did when it comes to my education aspect is that I used to offer an annual tutorial retouching collection that you could purchase, and you get a pre-purchase price, save some money, and you get a whole download of a bunch of videos, right? Mm-hmm. I used to do that annually. And this year I did it. And then after I did it and I sold some pre-sales and all that, it also hit me. I was like, wait a minute. One way that I've adapted is I've taken all these individual videos that I usually put in a collection, and they're all basically for sale a la carte. Which is nothing new for others, but it's new for me. And that has worked because people can look at that and go, oh, that tutorial is $20. It's an hour or so. It's capture one and it's a studio shot. That's what I do. Cool. and they buy that and they can pick and choose. And if they buy a couple, they get a discount. That is an adaptation that I've done, as opposed to a big collection for $2.99 or something like that. Again, others have done it. I haven't. So I'm learning to adapt. That's what I want to mention there. And then the workshops, I was not going to do any workshops this year,
Yep.
not on principle and not on bitterness, just a different focus. And I was going to stay home for a while, and a couple of things came up, and so I will be in San Juan, Puerto Rico in May, and I'm booked in Orlando for a class that I have to do there too, and that is in September. So that's it. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all I'm doing this year in terms of in-person workshops. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. I'm just focusing in other directions. But if I do things the way I want, 2027 will be a very busy travel year, very busy.
That's great.
2026, I'm just kind of chilling out. Now, as for NBP, the retouch tools, those are heavily focused on Photoshop actions now. And you want to talk about educating your audience, Matt? People are like, actions? Bro, I bought a set of actions from this person in 2013. It's all bullshit. And I'm like, well, give mine a chance, because this isn't a bunch of dumb color presets that don't look like anything and another bleach bypass preset nonsense. These are functional tools, and there's a multiple videos teaching you how each one works. So I feel like I'm pushing the boundaries of what actions can do, but they're supposed to be purposeful, not blind you with science nonsense. They're useful. So I challenge anyone who thinks actions are useless to go check out MVP, because I think I've done some pretty cool stuff there. And I don't want to be I don't want to sound any kind of way, but I say I've done, because I've done them. Those are actions that I made. Yeah. Most of them are what I call evolutions of zombie actions, functions that I made because I knew I needed something to do this function regularly. And then eventually I was like, I need to clean that up and make it useful for someone else. And then they turn into tools, right? So that's how it's happened, because you just see my zombie actions. I know what they do, but no one else would. So I had to make them functional for people. And that's what I've done over the years. So I have these cool collections. So that's the two things there. I have to teach my customers that actions are very powerful. And what's really cool about actions is that they're not expensive to produce. They're lightweight development. I can update them quickly. So when Adobe decides to shit on everything, I can fix them and then push them out, as opposed to regular development, which is slower and more costly. And then my tutorials, again, they're not, I make up a tutorial. I'm like, ooh, this shot that I'm going to edit today, let's bust the microphone out. We're going to record this one because I think this is going to be a cool lesson. 47 minutes later, I have it recorded. 90 minutes later, it's for sale on my website. I can keep making new, fresh educational content and keep it moving quickly. And so that's what I'm trying to do now, is stay adaptable, current, and constantly renewing, if you will. That's kind of like my new philosophy, as opposed to putting together a bulk of content once a year.
You know what? I have an AI prompt that I can send you that'll be able to create all those actions for you. We'll just kind of wrap this up there. No, I think, one of the things that I do love about your actions is not only do I see you make them, but you explain literally every facet of what the action is doing and how you, as the purchaser, as the customer, can modify it. Like if something goes wrong with your car, you've got a built-in mechanic that can show you exactly what belt is squeaking, right? And I just really like the intentionality that you put into educating the clients and your customers about what it is that the action's doing, how to modify it, how to tweak it, how it was created, all of that, because it's not a mysterious science, but what you are doing is taking years of knowledge and making it the most efficient process possible. And I really like that. Just while we're here, a couple of comments came in. Unquestionables talking about, his name's Ishan, by the way. If AI can replace you, it should. Standing out, pivoting, adapting to technology. Crafty, artsy creatives will stay as such. Believe that. Absolutely. 1,000%. And you mentioned you were going to Puerto Rico. We have a mutual friend down there. His name's Billy Thorpe. Really interesting character. I should put him in touch with you. He moved down there and he now makes a living as an Amazon influencer. He will make a video about a pen, and he's made 4,000 videos on Amazon, and he makes well over 6 figures doing what he's doing. And it's great. He fell into it during COVID, and he's just living life. He moved down to Puerto Rico this year. Then the last comment that Ishan had is, I've been making scripts for Adobe Illustrator projects when I need. Similarly, I should post those. Great idea. I think one of the things that I really liked about what you were just saying, because it's been my approach to content creation and doing this the same exact way, It's the reason I went to a live format rather than pre-recorded and then post-processing and posting it, a week later, because it was just taking too much time. We'll record this conversation. It will be immediately available on YouTube. I will then take this and cut it into shorts and spread that out. But the thing is, I don't have to now go through and edit anything on this video. It's done in real time. And what I'm finding as I talk to more and more content creators, it's about that speed and efficiency in your workflow. It's not about the tools. It's not about AI. It's not about anything other than knowing your own workflow, your own process, so that you can deliver more value to your followers, your customers, your clients, whatever it is. And I think people don't spend enough time on making their own workflow work for them, regardless of the tools. Understand what it is that you want to do, understand the life that you want to live, and how you want to find harmony between those two things. So, that's exactly right. Dude, this has been an incredible conversation. As always, we always have a great conversation.
Always
I love
a blast,
you being
man.
here.
Always a blast.
Are you going to be heading out to WPPI? I saw you there last year. You're not going to be heading out this year. Okay.
No.
There's a lot of people that are not going out there this year. So I was just curious. It's a last minute addition for me. I didn't know if I'd be able to see you out there and have a meal.
Generally have no desire to go to Las Vegas again, but I have no business purpose in WPPI this year either. So.
All right, man. All right. Again, for everybody watching, NinoBatista.com, start there. It'll link off to everything else. Do yourself a favor, check out the work, check out the tools and the actions, and just, support real art. I can't say enough good things about having these types of conversations. I think they're important. And if you're watching this and you're hearing what I'm saying, it's resonating in any way, shape, or form, have the same conversation with your friends, no matter what art you're producing, because these are the types of things that we have to figure out on the fly. And if we don't talk about it, we are going to all get swept up in some wave of unemployment, which I'm really hoping doesn't happen. So, all right, my friend, hold on one second while I shut everything down, and then I will see you when I see you. All right?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everything, man. It was a good time.
Man. Thanks, man.